My name is Sophia. I'm just an ordinary woman like anyone else who will turn 65 this year. Well, perhaps it's better to say I'm a grandma already. Let me tell you a bit about my past. I grew up in a fatherless home. According to my mother, my father passed away in an accident before I was born. But having my mother, I never felt lonely. Despite being poor, having my beloved mother made me happy. Then, the greatest misfortune of my life struck me. Mom, my mother fell ill and suddenly departed, joining my father. Why did you leave me alone and go off on your own? I don't know how much I cried. But no matter how much I cried, my mother didn't come back. At the age of 13, I was left orphaned and placed in a facility. And I decided not to continue to high school, but to start working. Of course, the teachers at the facility recommended that I go to high school. But I wanted to live on my own as soon as possible, with my own strength. That feeling was strong. I wanted to stand on my own feet rather than rely on others for money. I was anxious about starting work after junior high school, but somehow things worked out once I started working. I led busy days every day, and before I knew it, I was approaching 65. There were many things that happened over the 50 years in the metalworking industry. Firstly, major life events such as marriage and children. I got married at the age of 25 and gave birth to my son the following year. My son, who is almost 40 now, is already married and lives far away from home. Seeing his face once a year would be enough. Well, the fact that he's not relying on us is a sign of his health, so I'm sure he's doing fine. In about 3 months, I will retire. Maybe I'll go visit my son for a while, or perhaps I'll take a leisurely trip. While nurturing such thoughts, I eagerly awaited retirement day. But now, I have a little problem. I'm home. When I came back from work, my husband Joseph was sprawled on the sofa watching TV. The room was still messy, and my husband seemed irritated as usual. Hey, Sophia, is dinner ready yet? I'm starving. Yes, I'm preparing it now. But what were you doing today? When I asked, my husband angrily threw away the horse racing newspaper he was holding. I lost $500 again. That horse and jockey are hopeless. They even fell off. Oh, you lost again. I sighed at my husband's behavior. I've seen this scene so many times before. The sight of my husband taking it out on me every time he gambles and loses. You're wasting such a large sum of money again. Just because you're retired and have free time doesn't mean you should spend it all like this. Please stop spending money only on these things. Shut up. Don't order me around like you're the husband. Enough. I feel sick. With that, my husband spat out those words and left the house. My husband retired just 6 months ago. Since he had retired from a job he had held for almost 40 years, I had no complaints about him spending his relaxing time while I was at work. But after retirement, my husband started gambling on poker, slots, horse racing, boat races, every kind of gambling imaginable. Even when he was working, he sometimes gambled a bit with his spare cash, saying it was just for socializing. But now, he's become obsessed with gambling every day, spending money like water. He wasn't that kind of person, but certainly it was up to my husband to decide how he wanted to spend his retirement time. But money is different. To ease the anxiety about life after retirement, it's important to save money, even if it's just a little. And when it comes to needing care or support later on, money is still what's needed in advance. Why doesn't my husband understand this importance? Since my husband suddenly left the house, I reluctantly had dinner alone. It's like dealing with a rebellious teenager, even though he's an old man. After about 2 hours, my husband came back, giggling and slightly tipsy. Did he spend his money on gambling again this time? How many times has it been today? I sighed and sat in front of my husband. Hey, can't you reconsider how you spend money a little? If you continue like this, our retirement will be full of worries. We need to maintain a solid financial foundation, or we'll end up bankrupt.
If you're so concerned about budgeting, why don't you handle it yourself? Don't abandon your own job.
That's not the point. I'm just pointing out your wasteful spending. How much do you think you've spent on gambling? When I checked my husband's bank book, more than $30,000 had disappeared in just 6 months. That's why I want him to stop and reconsider his spending habits now. I thought so, but
I can recover it if I try. You're always nagging.
My husband completely ignored me. If you could recover it, wouldn't the gambling organizers lose money? My husband, who loses in the range of tens of thousands, has no talent for gambling. He must know that himself, but my husband remains obstinate.
I'm investing. It'll all come back big one day.
And he didn't budge from his stance. As conflicts over money increased between us, our conversations dwindled. That wasn't all. My husband started spending more time away from home. He used to come back by 10 p.m. at the latest, but lately he often didn't return until after midnight. The gap between us as a couple was definitely widening. Talking only made my husband irritable, and I was exhausted from dealing with his incomprehensible behavior. But with my own retirement approaching, I was busy with handovers and farewell visits. Honestly, I didn't have the energy to think about my husband. But I couldn't just leave our relationship like this. Continuing this lifestyle might lead to bankruptcy for real. At the very least, I had to protect my retirement savings. And then, the day of my retirement arrived.
Sophia, thank you for all your hard work. Now, enjoy your time relaxing with your husband.
Thank you, everyone. I truly appreciate everything. I was presented with a luxurious bouquet and received a big round of applause from my colleagues, marking the end of my 50 years of service. Saying goodbye to the company where I had spent over 70% of my life was indeed lonely. I gently wiped away tears as I left the company and returned home with a refreshed feeling. To my surprise, my husband, who is usually not at home, greeted me warmly at the door.
Sophia, today is your retirement day, isn't it?
His eyes were different from usual, gleaming with an unusual intensity. I had a bad feeling about this. Yes it is. I tried to steer the conversation away from anything contentious, but my husband insisted that I sit in the living room and began to speak.
Sophia, leave this house. It's the homeowner's command.
Huh? What are you suddenly saying?
This house is mine. Both the ownership and the mortgage payments, so kicking you out is easy. You've been nagging about how people spend money. You'll be getting your retirement money, right? Then you're no longer needed. Leave your money and disappear from my sight.
I never imagined being told such a thing on the day of my retirement. Afterward, my husband continued to express his dissatisfaction with me. In essence, he was frustrated with not being able to spend money as he pleased every day, so he wanted to get rid of his bothersome wife.
Who allowed you to work until today? It's because I allowed you to work, right? Even the retirement money you got, wasn't it because of me?
What an absurd argument. I wonder if his brain melted from excessive gambling.
Anyway, get out right now. I won't accept any arguments. If necessary, I'll take this to court or something. Disappear from my sight right now.
There were countless things I wanted to say, but it was useless to speak to my husband, who was completely agitated. Regarding the ownership of the house, he was right, and my husband had managed all the payments since the construction of the house. But to be suddenly confronted with such cold words, as if cutting off the relationship abruptly after 40 years of being together, the feeling of emptiness seemed more appropriate than sadness when considering the weight of those 40 years. I didn't want to think about anything anymore. To think that such a betrayal awaited me on the day of my retirement. That day, I packed my belongings and left the house without hesitation. I'll come to pick up the big things later. Farewell. My husband didn't say anything when I left. Marriages are fragile things, aren't they? Tears streamed down my cheeks. However, just 1 month later, The tables turned completely. It all started when I was lost in thought while gazing at the sea. Suddenly my phone rang. I ignored it at first after seeing the number, but it rang again. "You're so persistent. Hello?"
Sophia, where are you right now?"
It's been a long time since I heard my husband's yelling. It almost feels nostalgic. "The Bahamas, but—"
"I knew it. Going on vacation alone in the tropics, leaving your husband behind? What trash!"
It turns out that my husband's phone had an international calling feature, so when he dialed my number, it played a message saying, "You are making an international call."
"Where did you get the money for that? Your retirement money hasn't been deposited into your account yet. What's going on?"
Apparently, my husband had been diligently going to the bank every day to update my bank book. However, seeing no change in the balance, he found it suspicious and decided to call. "Listen, I never said anything about giving you my retirement money."
"Huh?"
"You told me to leave in such an angry manner, so I just followed your instructions. I never mentioned anything about the retirement money."
"But you left your bank book on the living room table. I assumed it was for me to update it when your retirement money came."
"Ah, that bank book. I had accidentally left an old one at home. It should have had a balance of only 12 cents, but my husband had been taking it to the bank every day. It's laughable to imagine." "What nonsense are you talking about? That's impossible. To prevent you from abusing it, I ensured that the retirement money would be transferred to me."
"Huh? What?"
My husband was surprised by my words, but continued to assert his claim.
"But as a married couple, I should have the right to it."
Sure, I agree. Shall we have one last discussion as a married couple, then?"
"Last? What do you mean?"
"What is he trying to play dumb about now? Listen, you tried to kick me out and take away my retirement money, just to suit your own convenience. And you think I wouldn't consider divorce in that situation? Don't underestimate me." When I said that, my husband fell silent. "I'll contact you later about the divorce. Goodbye." As I was about to hang up the phone,
"Wait a minute."
he sounded desperate. "What now?"
"I need you to transfer some money. There's nothing left in my account."
"What? You used up all our savings?" When I asked, my husband fell silent again on the other end of the line. It seems my husband, now without me as a stopper, had poured all his money into gambling like water, leaving himself completely broke. It had only been a month since I left. I wondered what kind of life my husband had been living during that time. It was so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. "To spend all that money you had? You must have a talent for it. And I guess I'm good at crisis avoidance, too. It was a good idea to arrange for my retirement money to be transferred elsewhere just in case. I'm really glad I did that." My son looked at me with puzzled expression as I clutched my phone.
"Mom, what's going on? Who are you talking to?"
"Dad, listen to this. He gambled away all our retirement money and family savings. Isn't it absurd?"
"What?"
My son was furious at my words. He snatched the phone and started lecturing his father. A hopeless husband and a reliable son. I wonder who he takes after. I was undecided about what to do for a few days after leaving home. Fortunately, my company expedited the procedure for paying out my retirement money, so I had cash on hand. All I needed was a place to calm my mind. I decided to rely on my son and his wife, who live in the Bahamas, for a while. When I explained the situation to them, they sympathized deeply and graciously agreed to take me in. So I spent some leisure time in the Bahamas with my son and his wife, planning to return to the U.S. after a while. I am so glad that my husband did not get my retirement money. After my son finished his lecture, I dropped the second bomb. "You receive documents from the lawyer soon, regarding the money you love so much?" My husband sounded relieved when I said this.
"What? Are you talking about the money you owe me? I'm ready for it."
He seemed relieved, as if he had misunderstood something. Since it seemed like he still hadn't grasped the situation, I explained it to him. "Certainly, Retirement funds are subject to asset division, but think about it carefully. You gambled away the family's money. I'll make sure that portion is deducted properly. Now, will there be any of your share left? I wonder. My husband's life had surpassed its limit. There's hardly anything left now.
Sophia, I'm sorry. How could I? I'll change. I'll stop gambling, and I'll cherish money from now on. So
what?
Can you lend me some money for one last gamble?
Oh, no way. Listening to my husband's hopeless words, I quietly hung up the phone. Later, I returned home and officially divorced my husband. He resisted until the end, but he no longer had any veto power. The misused living expenses were almost offset by the property division to him, leaving him with literally nothing but a drop in the bucket.
What am I supposed to do now to live?
The clinging voice of my husband echoes emptily. Well, you have a place to live, and you'll receive a pension, right? If it's not enough, then you should work.
Work again?
Afterward, my husband quickly found a part-time job and started working, but he couldn't quit gambling in the end, and his earnings quickly ran out. It seems he's shut out from borrowing money from friends or relatives. No one will help such a gambling addict. Well, it's his own fault, so I won't sympathize at all. I've left the Bahamas, where I spent time with my sons, and found a new place in the U.S. It would have been nice to enjoy a little more vacation, but it's also bad to disturb my son and his wife too much, and besides, the U.S. is where I feel most at ease. However, after 40 years of marriage, my heart felt like it had a hole in it. I have recently been volunteering 3 days a week at a nearby nursing home. At 65 years old, I'm completely like a grandma. I used to think so, but there are many seniors at the home who are older than me. When I take care of their meals and accompany them on walks, I can't help but wonder if this is how it would have been if my mother were alive. The elderly at the home are not all physically disabled. Some of them are much healthier than I am. Sophia, you're still young, so don't give up. I've been divorced 3 times myself. Grandma Mary, a resident who will turn 80 this year, chuckled and said that. How was it to get divorced 3 times? Well, you see, I've never been bored in my life. You see, everything in life is orchestrated by a higher power. You can overcome difficult and painful things. So, Sophia, you mustn't give up. Age really does bring wisdom and experience. Mary's comforting words touched me deeply, bringing tears to my eyes. It made me think maybe I should try to enjoy life a bit more. Yeah, that's what I thought.